Hello, and welcome to Understanding the Copy Editing Process on behalf of the Writers Workout 2025 Conference. I'm Sarah. I'm an editor, reader, coffee lover, and toddler wrangler. I currently offer manuscript assessments, copy editing, and proofreading for fiction manuscripts. While I do edit a lot of genres, my favorites are fantasy, romance, thriller, and women's fiction. When I'm not editing or reading, you can find me chasing after my son. He will be 3 years old soon. So we are in a super interesting and super tiring phase right now. Or you could probably find me just drinking more coffee and trying to brainstorm a hobby because I feel like I need one. Today, we are going to dive into the world of copy editing. If you've ever wondered what exactly happens during the copy editing process, or if you're preparing to send your manuscript to a copy editor, or you want to hire a copy editor but you're not entirely sure what the entire process entails, good news, you are in the right place. I'm going to walk you through what copy editing is, why it matters, and the key steps involved in the process. So, before we dive into what exactly copy editing is, I want to briefly review the different types of editing that are a part of the process of publishing a fiction manuscript. Developmental editing is the big picture work. It's focused on shaping the manuscript and addressing larger structural issues like plot, character development, pacing, and structure. And it also analyzes flow and point of view consistency and ensures the story and characters have clear goals, motivations, and conflicts. The big GMC. Basically, developmental editing is about making sure the story works as a whole. Line editing, on the other hand, is more focused on the style and language of the manuscript. It improves sentence structure, fixes awkward phrasing, and makes sure the writing is clear and engaging. Copy editing is where the manuscript is edited to be clear, consistent, and correct. It includes checking spelling, punctuation, and grammar, and ensuring that the manuscript adheres to a consistent style. It's all about polishing the writing and fixing the mechanical errors. Proofreading is the final step before publication. It's focused on catching any lingering minor errors in spelling, punctuation, or formatting issues that may have slipped through during the earlier stages of editing or that may have been introduced during formatting. Now, please keep in mind some editors do use different terminology for these different types of editing, and some editors also blend these stages together. So it's always a good rule of thumb to clarify what services are being provided when you're speaking with an editor. For instance, developmental editing can be called structural editing. Some editors offer services where they do one round of developmental editing, and include a second round for copy editing or line editing. And some other editors combine line and copy editing. I don't offer line editing by itself, but I do combine some elements of line editing in my copy editing projects if I feel that the writing can benefit from it or if the client has specifically requested it. So, why does copy editing in particular matter for fiction manuscripts? Again, copy editing ensures your story is clear, consistent, and correct. A manuscript that's filled with grammar mistakes, awkward phrasing, character, plot, or timeline inconsistencies, or even just inconsistent formatting can pull readers out of the story. No matter how strong your plot or characters are, these errors can pull readers out. As an author, you've spent a lot of time on your manuscript, and sometimes the small details can get overlooked. So, a professional copy editor is trained to spot these issues and fix them so that your readers aren't distracted. A well edited manuscript will enhance readability, it will strengthen your characters' voices, it will improve pacing, and it will ensure that your story flows smoothly from start to finish. It'll also make sure your voice comes through clearly and effectively because a good copy editor will never change your voice or your writing style. Now let's talk about some of the common areas we focus on during the copy editing process. Grammar and punctuation is pretty self-explanatory, but think commas, apostrophes, spelling variations, subject-verb agreement, misplaced modifiers, and so on. Consistency in style and tone. Whether it's following a particular style guide or dictionary, or just ensuring consistency in your voice, copy editing will check for things like maintaining a consistent tense throughout the manuscript or ensuring the tone stays true to the story. For example, are the moments of tension in the story reflected in the tone and word choice? Is the dialogue consistently formal or informal based on a particular character's personality? Correct word usage. Writers often confuse words that sound similar but have different meanings, like affect and effect, or complement and complement. These errors can be really tricky to spot on your own, especially when you've read your manuscript 1,000 times already, which is where that fresh pair of eyes comes in handy. For sentence structure and flow, you think, is the writing clear and easy to follow? And because sometimes sentences can be clunky or overly complex or much too short for what a scene requires. So a copy editor can break these sentences down and make sure each sentence flows smoothly and is easy for readers to digest. An example of how I blend line editing with copy editing is editing sentence lengths for pacing. For example, a quick action scene might benefit from shorter, clipped sentences, while a deeper or more introspective scene might call for longer and winding sentences. Formatting is something a lot of people tend to overlook, but it is crucial for a cohesive manuscript. Formatting includes things like chapter headings, consistent spacing, correct paragraph indentation, and the consistent treatment of words used as words, dialogue, quoted text, even if you include text messages or emails in a fiction manuscript. It's important to have those formatted consistently because it can distract readers from the content, from the actual story. If, say, you have 5 random spaces in the middle of a paragraph, readers can read back and think, oh, is it missing a word here? Is there something wrong? So that pulls them out of the story, and you don't want that to happen. Repetition. This is a close second when it comes to my favorite copy editing tasks. But this is basically catching repetitive phrases or repetitive character actions, anything that is too repetitive within the manuscript. For example, you might have characters nodding their heads over 500 times within an 80,000 word manuscript. So in an instance like this, I would make a general note in a comment on the manuscript, or I would send you, an email saying, hey, I noticed characters are doing this X number of times. Would you like me to flag the instances within the manuscript and suggest an alternative action that the character might be doing instead, so that we keep the narrative fresh and it doesn't feel like characters are constantly nodding their head throughout the story. And last but not least, my absolute favorite part of copy editing is the consistency check. This includes catching inconsistencies in character names, descriptions, timelines, settings, etc. You might have changed a character's name during one of your self-editing rounds, and you might not have called every single instance of the character's original name. So one of my checks will be, hey, let's make sure Bob is no longer Bob, but he's John. Or speaking of John, you might have inconsistent spelling. So John might be John at one point in the manuscript, and at another point it might be Jon. So it's my job as the copy editor to make sure that the character's name is spelled consistently throughout. Another example of a consistency check would be, you might not have realized the time it takes your main character to go from point A to point B is impossible. And this is important for all genres of fiction. It doesn't matter if your story is based in the real world or if it's based in a world that you've created. It needs to make sense for the character to have traveled within a certain amount of time. It's not going to take 5 minutes to get from point A to point B. Quite often with fantasy manuscripts in particular, an author will supply me with a drawing of their world, basically a map that I can reference while copy editing. And this is super, super helpful. I usually print out multiple black and white copies so I can accurately track various journeys throughout the manuscript. And this allows me to double check, the time in between scenes makes sense, and that the actual locations, the actual travel journey makes sense as well. And of course, these aren't the only things that a copy editor does. The copy editing checklist itself can be quite extensive depending on the genre and the length of the manuscript, but it should give you a better idea of the tasks involved. So let's talk about some copy editing tools right now. The first tool in my copy editing tool belt is Microsoft Word and its track changes feature. I do personally prefer Word over Google Docs. I've always used Word. I'm just more comfortable within the product. But plenty of editors do edit in Google Docs as well. With track changes, I can mark corrections and make suggestions. I can leave comments explaining why I made a certain change. I can leave comments with my genuine reaction to the story and the characters. It's really a great tool within Word. I always send 2 versions of my copy edit to clients. One shows all the tracked changes in red, so you can see exactly what I'm suggesting, exactly what I'm correcting. And the second file is the clean version, which will show the author what the manuscript were to look like if they accepted all of my changes. It's much easier to read the copy edited manuscript in the clean version without all the redlining from the track changes in place. And I do encourage my clients to look at both files I send them. Most of my clients will go through the tracked file and refer to the clean file if they want a better sense of how something reads with my suggestions. Style guides. A style guide is a set of standards for the writing, formatting, and design of a document or a manuscript. Which sounds really boring, but basically style guides are there to guide you or your editor to make informed decisions. Style guides can cover they cover everything from how to hyphenate certain words to the correct usage of commas to even the order of adjectives when you have 3 or 4 adjectives in a row describing a character. I use the Chicago Manual of Style for editing fiction, commonly referred to as CMOS or CMOS, but I do defer to a client style when it differs from CMOS. And of course, after making sure it doesn't have any potential for reader confusion. Style sheets are a great tool that we copy editors create to keep track of all the decisions we've made in the manuscript, all of the author's style preferences. Style sheets also include commonly misspelled words that we encounter in the manuscript, or words that have multiple acceptable variants and which variant the author prefers. A common one, the color gray in US English is spelled with an A, and in UK English is spelled with an E. So if you have a preference for either language that you've stated when we've gone over the contract, I'll go through instances and make sure we're following the correct spelling. Style sheets they're basically databases for your manuscript, and they're especially useful when it comes to books in a series. If you have a copy editor editing book 1, you have that style sheet as the beginning database for book 2. You have it to reference all of the character descriptions, the timelines, the settings, the lexicon, the magical items you've created in your magical world. It's a great starting point for book 2 when you can't remember, oh my God, what color did I make character A's hair in book 1? And instead of having to flip through your book or having to, search through your old manuscript, you have it right there in the style sheet from book 1. When I work with fantasy manuscripts, these style sheets can be really, really long. One of my most recent fantasy style sheets was over 50 pages. It included general style notes, world building aspects like months and days of the year, and the different locations on the continent, the islands surrounding the continent, a lexicon, a list of magical objects and their attributes, detailed character and location descriptions, and I also included a timeline that had brief chapter rundowns. Macros are a series of commands and actions that are recorded together and used as a single command to automate repetitive tasks within Word. So they basically streamline operations for your editor. And Paul Beverly is an amazing human being who's created a ridiculous amount of macros available to editors to use for free. I am still learning my way around them because I'm not the most tech savvy person. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Paul for making them so easily accessible. Perfect It is a tool I use to help me check consistencies within a manuscript and flag anything that I want to pay closer attention to during my copy edit. It's really a time saver for larger manuscripts. I run it before my initial read through, and I highlight anything I want to pay attention to. And this might include, US versus UK English usages, similarly spelled names throughout the story, capitalization or formatting inconsistencies. I highlight them without making any changes, just so I make sure I pay particular attention to them during my actual copy edit. So, what can authors expect during the copy editing process? Now that you've seen what a copy edit usually entails, I'd like to take a step back and discuss what you can expect during the actual process itself. I'll be speaking about this with my own process in mind, and I just ask that you keep in mind that other editors may have different processes than I do. And just because theirs is different from mine, or mine is different from an editor you've worked with in the past, it doesn't mean that either of our processes is wrong. It's just how we go about working with our clients. Okay, let's say you are an author with a manuscript that is developmentally sound, whether that means you worked with a developmental editor or book coach, or you edited the big picture elements yourself through multiple self-editing runs. You are ready to hire a copy editor, and you come across me on social media, on the EFA directory, via my website, wherever you happen to find me. You send me a DM or you fill out my sample edit form. And if you've also sent me a sample of your manuscript, I email you to let you know I received it, to ask any clarifying questions, and to let you know when I'll send you the copy edited sample and a quote, usually within 1 or 2 business days, depending on my work week. I do the sample edit and I start adding notes to a style sheet, and then I put together a quote for you. My quote is based on how long it took me to do the sample, what shape your manuscript seems to be in from the sample that I saw, and a couple other factors. I send you the sample edit back as a tracked version and a clean version, and I send you my quote, and I give you a quick rundown of what you can expect from working with me as your copy editor. And I also invite you to ask as many questions as you'd like at this stage. I try to be as open and honest and communicative with clients as possible, because I know it can be, very nerve-wracking to send your manuscript off to an editor. So I try to make sure you're as comfortable as possible with me. Now, you might be satisfied with my sample edit and you want to hire me at this point. Or you might want to chat about the sample or about editing in general. You might ghost me, which happens, but that's fine. Or you might tell me that you're going with another editor who performed a sample for you, which is totally fine. Please never feel awkward or feel bad that you don't choose to work with a particular editor after they provided you with a sample edit. The sample edit process is very important for both parties. We both get a chance to get a feel for each other and see if we're the right fit for each other. I always encourage authors to choose the editor that they vibe with the most. or that they think will do the best job on their manuscript. Whatever criteria you've set yourself for working with an editor, you should stick to that criteria. And on the other hand, if I don't feel like I'm the right editor for you after performing the sample edit, I will perform the entire sample edit. I will send it to you. I will send you a quote, but I will also say, I don't think I will be the best fit for your manuscript. And that could be for really any reason on my end, but I will do my best to refer you to another editor who I do think would be a better fit for you. An editor who might have more experience in your genre. And I've only, say, edited one manuscript in your genre, and I don't feel I can do my best work for you. I do have a bunch of edit buddies. I keep their info on a referral sheet for myself. So if that's ever the case, I will try to help you as much as possible still. But let's say you're happy with my sample at this point. We've come to an agreement on the total and the payment plan if necessary. We both sign a contract, you pay the deposit or the first payment, and then you send me your manuscript by the agreed upon date. And from here on out, my process follows a very set flow. I run Perfect It, and I flag anything I want to check or correct or look into. I perform standard formatting checks, like ensuring there's consistency in chapter headings or titles and consistency in page numbers, correct paragraph indentations. There's no extra spaces hiding anywhere. And I also make notes on how you prefer to format your dialogue, format your internal dialogue and thoughts, format any text messages or emails or diary entries. And then I get comfy and I do my first initial read through of your manuscript. I'm still not technically making any changes to the manuscript at this point. I make general notes on your story, your characters, your plot, your settings, your timelines, anything and everything that I might find relevant to my copy editing decisions or relevant to the creation of your style sheet. I do flag more potential issues or corrections during this stage, and I do start creating your full style sheet here. Decisions I make during the next pass, which is the intensive copy editing pass within this round, do rely on a lot of what I learned during this initial read-through pass, which is why I do it. After my read-through, I might send you an email with any questions I have about your stylistic choices or formatting preferences, and I update the style sheet with your answers. And then at this point, I turn track changes on. Why did I have it off until this point? Because besides the standard formatting checks, again, I haven't actually changed anything in your manuscript yet. I don't want the document to get bogged down with too many red lines either when I'm deleting extra spaces, correcting indentations, making sure your manuscript is Times New Roman, 12-point font, double spaced. The manuscript would just look like a solid red line at this point, which is not what we want. I don't want to be overwhelmed myself when I'm editing, and I don't want you to be overwhelmed when you look at your manuscript after I send it to you. So I did touch upon the common copy editing checks before, and this intensive copy editing pass is where I really get my hands dirty. I consider every single word. I look up a lot of things, even things that I know the answer to already, I look up just to verify. After I finish this intensive copy editing pass, that's the entire round, is the two passes, the initial read through and the intensive copy editing pass. I send you the tracked and cleaned versions along with your style sheet. This is your time to review my changes, address my queries, which are questions I ask you within the comments in the manuscript, and your chance to ask me any questions. If you want more information about a certain change, if I didn't explain it to you enough why I changed something, if you don't agree with my change, no question is stupid at this point. I want to get all the questions out in the air so that they can be addressed during round 2 of my copy editing. So you've sent the manuscript back to me at this point with your answers to my queries, your rejections, and acceptance of my changes. And I address any queries that remain, and I do another copy editing pass before sending you the final copies. And poof, you're good to go for formatting at this point. I make sure that I'm available to you if you do have any questions at this point. But Now my work as a copy editor is done. I've sent you the final copy, copy edited versions, the tracked and clean. So I'm done. Now, the timeline for this whole process, it does vary a lot depending on the length of the manuscript and its complexity. A 60,000 word manuscript might take about 3 weeks to copy edit it. A manuscript over 100,000 words can take 4 to 6 weeks to copy edit. So it's really important to plan accordingly for this stage, especially if you're aiming for a specific publishing date. And of course, timelines and deadlines should always be discussed during your initial consult with an editor, or after you receive the sample edit. While the copy editing process does take time, it really is worth it. A copy edited manuscript doesn't just improve grammar and fix typos. It enhances your story, it sharpens your voice, and it ensures consistency and readability. A manuscript that is clear, cohesive, and professionally polished will stand out and help boost your credibility as an author. So, if you'd like a copy of these slides or a PDF transcript of this presentation, I'm more than happy to provide them to you. If you could just please shoot me an email. My email is on the screen right there, info@rightwayedits.com. Just shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to send you either the slides or a PDF transcript. And you should also have received a copy of the copy editing FAQ guide downloadable resource, which also includes a little demonstration of track changes. I wrote up a mini story, and I show you on the downloadable resource the original story, the tracked changes version with comments, and what the clean version would look like. If you have any questions, or if you're ready to get started on your own manuscript, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to help bring your work to the next level and support you and your story in whatever way I can. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this session has given you some valuable insights into the copy editing process, and happy writing. And I look forward to seeing your books out in the world.